Hello, everyone. Welcome to another very special episode of Shred Your Halo with my best friend Jharna and me, Edel. We apologize for the glitch in the scheduling where we were not able to upload our videos like we normally do once every fortnight, and the reason for it is in quick succession. Jharna and I both contracted COVID, and we were on home quarantine one after another. So this video is especially going to be about our individual experiences with COVID 19. We're also going to touch upon the COVID situation in India. And this is not going to be a fun video. When has any of our videos ever been fun? But this is I think the reason I wanted to do it more than anything else is because I wanted it to serve as an audio visual time capsule of a time when things were so incredibly strange for all of us. So hey Jarna, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Much better, thank you. So let's start with you since you're my COVID senior. So tell us about your experiences with your physical symptoms and what you physically went through with COVID.
Considering it happened about a month and a half back, I don't remember too much of it. There were a few things that I do remember, which I think it started off with my throat feeling a little weird. When I was talking, I was noticing that my throat would just close suddenly and there would be no sound at all. And I just thought it was a bit unusual, but I just assumed it was because I was tired, or I don't know what I thought it was, because I remember we had conversations during the lockdown last year where you would say just assume it is COVID if not proven otherwise, right? So I think a part of me, a very small part of me, was in denial that it was COVID, because considering the rate at which it has been, proliferating, you want to be on the safer side. So I didn't really think much of it. I just thought maybe I'm a bit tired. But I do remember noticing a few things, like if I spoke a lot, I would get physically tired. And that was not something that had ever happened before. So I just figured, the weather's changing, it's becoming hot. And then a couple of days later, I noticed that I started to lose my sense of taste. And it was because I was eating something and it was a little bitter in general, but I couldn't feel it. So I thought, oh, yay, I'm getting used to the taste of this particular thing that I'm eating. And I was very happy about it. And then the next day, I could literally feel nothing, no taste, no smell. And even then, I just attributed it to some normal cold. But I decided to get myself tested and I found that I was positive. So I just stayed at home. Physically, in terms of fever or feeling tired, there wasn't really much. It was just maybe a little bit of lethargy, not more than that. But of course, you have to be careful about everything, right? So I would check my temperature, I would check my oxygen levels, and they remain normal too. Plus, I remember you had advised me to take a lot of physical rest and drink a lot of water to make sure I'm okay all the time. So I did those things, but because I have to cook for myself, there was a little bit of physical exertion from my side, and it didn't feel like it was too much, to be honest. It was okay. It was manageable. What I did notice after I completely recovered was it completely blew my mind, because it was not something I expected to experience at all. I started resuming my regular physical practice, my yoga and all of that. And I started noticing I think for about a week or 10 days, I noticed that physically my muscular strength had gone down. And things that I was able to do very easily earlier, I couldn't. I couldn't even hold a posture for, say, 5 or 7 breaths. And I remember feeling shaky, and I was a little surprised by that. And then as I kept at it, I just, I'm coming back to my regular movement, what I'm able to do physically, that is coming back to normal. But initially, it more than surprised, I was honestly shocked because I remember thinking this level of like uh, degeneration in strength, it's not something that I had foreseen. I really hadn't foreseen that. So I think these were the few things that I went through. I think other than that, honestly, it was uneventful. The 14-day quarantine that I had was almost, it was required, obviously, but I got so bored because it's 14 days, right? I did keep myself busy with reading and painting and doing whatever little that I could. Complete voice rest, of course. But overall, it was quite uneventful, to be honest. But there were lessons that I learned, behind the scenes, why I fell sick, what could have been the reasons for falling sick, a lot of learning about myself through that journey. So yeah, that has been my experience. What about you?
I think I knew in January this year that I was going to get COVID. It started out as this vague paranoia, and but I thought that if I didn't vocalize it, if I ignored it, it will not happen to me. But I knew that I knew that I knew. And then we were going to close down our COVID wards in March, which was around the time when you fell ill. And I kept thinking, okay, but there is something telling me that I'm going to get COVID. And the reason for that was I was completely non-aligned with my life. I was being very, very inauthentic. I was living a life where I had created certain habits that I wanted to govern my life. And the habits were taking over. And I had reached a point where um, I was again helpless and the habits were ruling me. And I didn't have any sense of agency. I realized that I was at the crux of my life where I had um, worked through most, if not all, of my childhood issues. And now I'm in a place where I have to resolve a lot of other issues. But it's like doing your internship. Like you're working and you work on it. It's not something that paralyzes me. These are works. These are things that will only come up to the surface if I am creatively stepping forward in my life, and I wasn't doing that. Simply because I just thought, oh, I've set a good course for myself. It's on autopilot. Let me just move. And I knew I was going to fall ill, and this is not a thought that is natural for me. I live in a sphere where I'm completely not aware of my body, and when I fell ill, it was almost a relief because I was like, it's done now. Physically, I had, because I work in the front line, probably my viral load is very high. For the first 3 days, my temperature was between 102 and 103, which means I should have technically gone to the hospital. But I kept thinking, but my premonition throughout from January told me that I was going to get COVID, but it was not going to be serious. So I don't know how logical that is. So even though clinically I was seeing my temperature being that high, physically I didn't feel that fever so much. All I felt was a cold from above my nasopharynx. So my nose was so stuffed. My forehead, my supraorbital regions, and my cheeks, I could feel it like, oh, and I had so much of phlegm. I felt like it was just phlegm and congestion. Um, and I couldn't breathe properly as a result of, even though even though there was so much of congestion, and I felt like as though I couldn't breathe, my nose wasn't blocked. It's weird. And I did have throat pain. I had no difficulty in breathing. So the first 3 days, my fever was very high. And then slowly, gradually, over the next couple of days, it came down, and I have been fever free for the last 2, 3 days now. 3 days, yeah, 3, 4 days. I have been fever free. The coughing, my voice was very like I had like this aggressive flu. So I sounded not sexy like Phoebe Buffet. Friends, I could not have had a lesser sexy voice. It was so horrible. So I had like a really bad voice. Um, throughout it all, I knew I had a governing sense that this had come because I had allowed it to happen. It's almost like I knew living in a high risk environment. I mean, hello, it's a pandemic, and consistently not doing the things that I needed to do to keep myself safe. And so it was almost like a sense of relief having COVID. And I had my first shot vaccination in January and my second shot in February. Um, so yes, if you do get vaccinated, you will still possibly have the disease. Um, and we could possibly have COVID-19 as a huge threat for the next foreseeable future, for the next 5 to 7 years. It will keep mutating and it'll keep coming back. So yes, I could still fall ill. Jharna, you could still fall ill. We could all keep falling ill. But the fact that you get vaccinated means that you have an additional firewall from breaching your defenses. So now I am completely physically fine. Right from day one, physically, even though I was seeing the temperature, I didn't feel it. But I was very, very sensible. I paced myself, and I started doing my yoga practice 3 or 4 days ago, and I haven't had much of a problem with it. But just to be on the safe side, I stick my Vicks inhaler in my mouth while I'm doing my practice. So yeah, no smell, no taste anymore. But I was never a big taster or a smeller before anyway. So it's like it's not a big loss to me at all. So I haven't lost anything. I have to admit that it had brought me closer to the feet of God, source consciousness, where I have resurrendered my life. And well, yeah, that. And my biggest fear was getting admitted in the hospital. I was so afraid. I was so afraid. I did not want to take a bed away from somebody else who will require it. And that was a fear of another doctor who fell ill along with me as well. And he managed to home quarantine, have the treatment come to him. So that was so admirable. And I kept thinking, dear God, I do not want to take a bed away because of the pandemic. What has been your feeling? Have you been keeping abreast with the news and things like that, Jharna?
Not so much. I mean, basic news, yes, I do see, like, I do see some of the things because it's important to know a little bit about what's going on. But yeah, if you start reading too much literature and you start spending too much time on your phone, your TV, and watching the news all day, it's too much stress. All I can do at this point to make the world a safer place is not go out. That's the only thing that I can do at this point that is going to keep me safe and hopefully keep somebody else safe as well.
Yeah.
And I, of course, read about the lockdown because I need to see what is functioning and whether I'll be able to get my basic needs met during a lockdown. So those things, yes, I do see that. And I also see some people doing some brilliant work who are not on the front lines, but they're doing other things like, they're taking responsibility and ownership of helping other people out who probably require that help. So those things I do still look at, but actively watching the news, seeing the numbers rising every day, that's not something I do. I haven't been doing that right from the beginning of the pandemic, and I don't intend to do it in the future either. If I hear some news from somebody else, um, it's just information at this point for me. All I can do is just pray and hope that things will get better. But actively putting myself in that place where I watch news every single day, no, I don't. What about you?
I have been following the news uh, quite closely, and it's alarming. And today, the day we are recording it, we are recording this video on the 8th of May, and I think we'll be publishing it today, right? Hopefully, right. Um, as of today, Tamil Nadu and Chennai, we've clocked the highest death rate, um, and it's very alarming. And again, today we woke up to some very good news where there is going to be complete lockdown from day after tomorrow, which is the 10th, up until the 24th. So 2 weeks of complete lockdown, very, very strict. So that's very good news as well. Uh, do lockdowns work? Uh, yes, they do. I wish they didn't, so that we could have like a justifiable reasons to flaunt the rules and be outside. The truth is, lockdowns work up until the point that everybody gets vaccinated. So once everybody gets vaccinated, then you can ease the lockdown. Up until the point of herd immunity, lockdown is literally the only way to do this. India has surpassed the world's population as far as infection and death. And that is extremely, extremely sad because very prematurely, I was so proud of my country. I talked about how I was constantly talking to my friend in Germany and my other friend in the Philippines, were constantly talking about, oh my God, we sent vaccinations to Africa, some nation in Africa, as a goodwill gesture. We're doing this. We beat it. Our numbers are so low. But here's the thing that we are forgetting, right? When the whole world has a particular trend, we should never think that we are the exception. We're not the exception. We should never operate under the rule that somehow, for me, it's going to be different. No, it's not going to be. And we have proved it to ourselves with frightening evidence. And I hope more than anything else, this will give us a template, a, 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 a list of things that we're not supposed to do in 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 in, in times of crisis. America, of course, was like the worst nation in the beginning of this year, but they turned it all around. And the reason they were able to turn it all around is because they have the resources to, you know. Now, most of their country, if not everybody in their country, is vaccinated. There is no more lockdowns. The borders are opening for them. And we went through something quite similar to the Black Lives Matter, through the, defund the police. They had so many riots. We had so many religious and political gatherings as well. The difference is they can afford to do it. We can't. And we assumed that just because we see evidence of something like that on social media gives us a weird idea somehow, and the access to news gives us this weird idea that we're in some level playing field. We are not. We are not. And our crisis has opened our eyes to how vulnerable economically, socio-economically, and population-wise, healthcare-wise, we really are. There is no more talk about economy. Our economy is, I don't know how many years it's going to take for us to get up to speed. But right now, there is no economy if we're dead. So this is so vital that we're running short of oxygen. We're running short of medicines that could give us a fighting chance. So I just I'm very grateful for the lockdown. I'm very grateful, and I hope it works. And I hope that maybe a year ahead later, when I watch this video, I'd be like, oh, how far we've come. I want to be able to say that. Um, because Indians have proved time and time again how resilient we are, how ingenious we are, how we make the best of the situations we're in, um, and 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 that strength is going to be called to the fore for us now more than any time else. And this is the hugest crisis. There's so many people who've lived through wars before this. In our generation, this this is the defining moment. And I hope for everybody who's lost somebody that they loved, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Um, I'm so sorry. And I don't know who to blame. I don't know. I think we should all pray more than anything else that somehow we'll get to the other side and somehow we'll rebuild and we will learn to flourish. And more than anything else, we'll never forget this and we'll never let this happen again. And that's my biggest prayer. Sorry, I got a bit, sorry. Do you want to say something, Jharna?
Stay home. I mean, the lockdown is there in place for a reason. Please stay at home, because there are people who will even flout the lockdown rules with some excuse or the other, um, go around without wearing masks. And the strangest thing is, both of us got COVID despite being such uh, like staunch believers in wearing the mask and gloves and everything all the time. So it's not like you are the exception, you are the rule. So try not to make it seem like it's not a big deal, because it is. It is a very real thing that we're all dealing with. So please do this so all of us can get back to a semblance of normal adjacent, if nothing else, right? Um, but yes, that's it. That's all I have to say about that.
And also, if you do test positive for COVID, I thought the reason for making this video was also to give people a sense of hope that if you get COVID doesn't mean you have to be in the hospital. Um, you do not have to get afraid. Don't be afraid. All information, everything, all help is just a phone call away. Our government has made everything quite transparent. Your healthcare facilitator is easily accessible. There's just a Google away. Just call somebody, get in touch with the doctor, and stay at home. And only seek help in the form of admission in a hospital and hospital treatment only when the treating doctor finds it to be valid. Otherwise, don't. Uh, this disease, as horrible as it is, Indians are extremely strong. We come from a tropical country which has extreme temperatures. We have in our genetic makeup the memory of diseases past and how we overcame it. The code has been passed down to us. If anybody can beat it, we can. Okay, so let's not get too frightened. It is a frightening scenario, I understand that, but this is a call to be brave. This is not asking anybody to be fearless. Brave is doing something scared anyway. We will be scared, and our fear is valid. But let's just have our wisdom override our knee-jerk fears at this time. We are overpopulated in the hospital and understaffed, and we need room for people who truly deserve it. So people, if most of them, 75%, sorry, 1 minute. Sorry, 75% of the COVID cases can be treated at home. 75%. And having a COVID infection is not a death sentence. It just means that you will be immune, whether you got the infection or whether you got vaccinated prior to the infection or not. You're just going to be immune to that particular strain of virus going forward. So do not be afraid. Don't lose your head with fear. Be brave. Stay at home. Have access to some medical wisdom, a doctor who is going to stay in touch with you and hold your hand through the process, and go to a hospital only when absolutely required. We've got this. Let's take it one day at a time and be sensible. Do you want to add something to this, Jharna?
No.
So thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Shred Your Halo. And I genuinely hope a year from now, watching this video, I just want to say, wow, I am so proud of us. And I hope that's prophetic words. So thank you for joining Jharna and me for this episode. Don't forget to click like. Please subscribe to our channel, and we put forth content once every 2 weeks. And for now, bye. Stay safe.